Yo, what's going on? Um, Today we're gonna be talking about private prisons. So on the syllabus, let's see. On the syllabus, you got two videos. You got the first one is called Adam Ruins Everything. The shocking way which private prisons make money. And the other one is Kids for Cash. Watch both of those. Um, the first one, Adam Ruins Everything, that's basically talking about how the private prison industry pretty much just generally operates. Like some of the main differences is catchphrases, how it came about, and just like the systemic beliefs and ideologies that exist in any given prison or private prison. And then Kids for Cash is talking about judges out of Pennsylvania who basically were involved in a scandal in which they were incarcerating juveniles for very, very petty offenses. Like there was one kid who, and you got to blame the kid's family for this too, but like the family called the police on him because he threw like a steak or something at a barbecue at somebody, and basically he ended up going to jail for that doing time. So, in that case, the judges, they was getting paid off behind closed doors by the, what's it called? By some of the people working for the GO group, which is a private prison. They're like I believe they're the second largest private prison company right after Corrections Corporations of America. And so you basically have, people that are incarcerated behind bars, making revenue for the company. And then you also got, judges being bribed and things like that also go hand in hand with that. You have politicians as well who basically they form policy in a way to support private prison growth. Someone like Marco Rubio, for example, he's had $40,000 in campaign dollars donated to him by the GO group. And then he's also allowed certain people who were, executives or managers to whatever capacity at the GO group end up working with him or for him in politics. So it's a revolving door. It goes hand in hand. Corporations, they have the opportunity to lobby, which basically means they can push a bill, to get, or a policy to be pushed forward on a bill or something of that nature. But obviously you have to have money to do that. Legally, you could do that. People consider it similar to bribing, but legally. But the reality is you could push, anybody could lobby, but you have to have a certain amount of money to make sure that your policy could even make it to the desk of some of these politicians. So the main difference, obviously, between private prisons and just general government-owned jails and prisons in general is private prisons, you actually own stock, or they own stock. So a private prison company, like the GO group, if you go on, like if you own stocks, if you have Robinhood, for example, you could go onto the GO group, search them up, and then you'll see that they have a stock. And then, of course, policy does dictate, okay, how many people going to buy this stock or not buy this stock. For example, and I'll share the screen with you real quick. Give me a second. For example, right now this stock is at $11.53. But we're gonna look back at let me try and go back, see how far back we can go. I'm trying to see if it's going to allow us to go back a couple of years to look at this. But basically the point is, and right now the Wi-Fi is just mad lazy and slow. But the point is, Geo Group, let's see. Just trying to round it right now. Hold up. Okay. So let's click all. So basically right here is showing you from 95, from when basically they first became publicly tradable. And it gives you the interlopes between every 5 years or so. Right here. You can see around November, a little before that, Geo Group stock was at $15 and some change. Basically, once it got to January 2000, hold on. Once the new year started coming around, which was around the time that Trump got into presidency, basically the Geo Group stock doubled, because one thing that Trump was focusing on was talking about the deportation of immigrants and things of that nature. And Geo Group actually is the main stakeholder that deals with the deportation process, and even just the warehousing of people, basically holding people in cells and things of that nature who are going to be deported. So the Department of Homeland Security directly has a contract with the Geo Group. And so, of course, the stock of Geo, since it's a private company, it doubled in just a matter of maybe 3 months, just because of policy that Trump was pushing and stating out there. So this is going to be a pretty short video. I just wanted to show you that real quick, just so you could see a real life example, something that's still kind of current and common. Basically, the main difference between a private prison and public prison, private prison system raises a lot of questions. The one question is, can a private prison legally incarcerate people? Isn't that the government's job to house and hold prisoners? So the thing is, private prisons are not the ones, that are directly warehousing people. It's the government that basically comes into a contractual agreement with these private prisons, because oftentimes the private prisons come with these promises that, hey, we could do what you're doing for a cheaper price. But now what they're not telling you is usually that means, because the only way you save money is by cutting expenses in different areas. The way that this happens a lot in private prisons is letting go of employees, correctional officers, very much needed staff. And so now the private prison becomes taxed and overburdened because it doesn't have enough personnel and individuals to help facilitate it properly. They've also cut back on like food, you know what I'm saying? Like providing proper food. Like they had a contract with Aramark, and Aramark, they're the company that provides food at a lot of different sports stadiums. Like I know at City Field, Aramark, that's the food vendor. Like even though you see the people selling hot dogs and all that stuff, like the company that basically they represent is Aramark, right? Aramark basically had a contract with Geo Group, and it was found that they were providing the people that were incarcerated molded food. And so obviously when you have food expiring and you're holding on to food longer, you're not losing as much money. You're not, the process of using it and consuming it is not the same. You know what I'm saying? Of course, you have people who invest and buy stocks. So in a time like Trump, you know, saying we're going to increase arrests of undocumented individuals, what ends up happening is everybody's already thinking about this. Okay, like the stock for GEO Group is going to go up. Everybody is buying these stocks for $15, and you could buy 200 stocks of 15. You could buy however many stocks somebody decides they want to buy of GEO Group, and that obviously just generates a whole bunch of revenue for the GEO Group as well. So that's how they get money too. And at the end, like some of the facilities are not kept up to par. People are living in conditions that obviously aren't the most ideal, and those are the different ways that they kind of economize. It's by chipping away at the little things, you know. Maybe not providing as much hygienic related stuff as well, like cutting at the little things, because even though they're little things, like when it adds up, like it really adds up. But yeah, the government, they contract the private prisons, because if the government, let's say on a daily basis, hold somebody for $30 a day, and GEO says that we could do it for 25. Mathematically, it makes sense, because 25, like $5 doesn't mean much for one person, but when you're talking about hundreds of people, it starts adding up. So now the other thing too is that these private prison companies, they basically have clauses within their contract that they have to maintain a certain bed capacity. So like if the government doesn't fill the private prisons up to that capacity, the government owes the private prison, you know, a fee of however much. So that creates incentive and initiative for policies to also be formed around, you know, incarcerating people, because the government is purposely trying to fill up these beds in order to not violate the contractual agreement, which also means that once you're behind the wall, it could be harder for you to get parole, because you're going to get hit with more infractions. Like infractions happen at a higher rate in private prisons than in public ones, because the incentive is not to let people go back into the community. Like profitability over rehabilitation is the MO, right? Like it don't make sense to let somebody go back to the community if letting them go back to the community takes money out of your piggy bank. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why, like, you'll have correctional officers in these private prisons provide more infractions for maybe things that probably wouldn't even make sense. You know what I'm saying? And so that's part of the conversation as well. Let me share this again. There are currently around 171,000 inmates housed in private prisons. It represents less than 8% of the total prison population. Many of these prisons save the government money, but some actually cost more per prisoner than a public facility will cost. All right. And so that's kind of just a general overview of this. This article right here, I basically was talking about Marco Rubio and stuff like that. What's it say here? The two largest for-profit prison companies, GEO and CCA, and their associates have funneled more than $10 million to candidates since 1989, basically politicians, and have spent nearly $25 million on lobbying efforts. Meanwhile, these private prison companies have seen their revenue and market share soar. They now rake in a combined $3.3 billion in annual revenue, and the private federal prison population more than doubled between 2000 and 2010, according to a report by the Justice Policy Institute. Private companies house nearly half of the nation's immigrant detainees, compared to about 25% a decade ago. So right there is obviously getting even further into the relationship there. You know, and it's obviously not in the favor or in the interest of a lot of these politicians to free Black and brown people. And so they're going to continue to do this until things kind of just start shaping a little differently, or a lot differently. But I would say, in order to get some more insight, check out the other two videos too, because the Adam breaks, you know, the Adam ruins everything one, like that's a pretty general good overview of it. But then you also have the Kids for Cash one, because you have a judge who's literally having a backdoor deal with the GO group. They, like, I think it was two judges, they got over $2 million combined to sentence juveniles into facilities for like crimes that really would probably not even go as far as probation. So, you know, just something to consider. But enjoy your day. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free, reach out to me. You have the articles and the documents there as well. I'll be talking to you soon. Peace.